There is a sound, a frequency, something older than language, older than religion, older than the first institution that ever told you what to believe and what to forget. And the question is not whether that sound exists. The question is, why were you never taught it? Why, across centuries of cathedral construction and council meetings and carefully curated scripture, did the most powerful religious institution in human history go so far out of its way to silence 3 specific sounds, to erase 3 specific frequencies from the practice of the pneumatic soul? That question is not a conspiracy theory, it is a cosmological one, and tonight we go into it completely. Before we begin, if you have found your way to this channel, something in you already knows that the official version of spiritual reality is incomplete. Subscribe now, turn on the notification bell, because what we do here, week by week, is reconstruct the map that was taken, and you will want to be present for every piece of it. Begin with what the Gnostic tradition understood about sound, that the material world is not made of matter in the way that modern physics and ancient theology both suggest. It is made of vibration, of frequency, of patterns of resonance that the demiurge arranged, layer upon layer, into the prison architecture of the Konoma. The deficiency, the world of lack. The demiurge did not build his construction from nothing. He imitated. He copied the patterns of the pleroma, the genuine divine frequencies, and he produced a counterfeit. A world that resembles the pleroma's structure but lacks its essential quality, its genuine resonance. And within that counterfeit world, within the architecture of copied frequencies and imitated divine patterns, the demiurge and his archons established the mechanisms of control, the systems that keep the pneumatic spark from recognizing itself, from vibrating at the frequency that would dissolve the prison walls and awaken the soul to its genuine nature. Sound was one of those mechanisms, but it was also one of the keys. The same frequency that the archons use to keep the soul asleep can, when correctly understood and correctly applied, be the instrument of its waking. This is what the Church understood, and this is what the Church erased. The first suppressed frequency is the one the Gnostic tradition called the sound of the pleroma's overflow. To understand why this frequency was dangerous, you have to understand what the pleroma's overflow actually is. The monad, as the Apocryphon of John describes it, does not produce from lack. It does not reach outward because it is incomplete. It produces because it is so entirely complete, so entirely full, that the fullness cannot remain contained within the singularity of the one. It overflows. The barbello, the first thought, the divine feminine principle that emerges from the monad's self-contemplation, is not a creation in the architectural sense. She is not built or designed or constructed. She is the natural sound of the monad knowing itself. The resonance produced by a fullness too full to remain silent. And that resonance, that specific frequency of divine overflow, is what the Gnostic teachers called the first sound, the primordial vibration that preceded and produced the pleroma's entire structure. The Nag Hammadi texts, particularly the 3 steles of Seth and the Allergenes, preserve traces of this understanding. They describe a contemplative practice in which the practitioner does not reach outward toward the divine, does not perform or petition or worship in the external directed way that institutional religion demands. Instead, the practitioner turns inward, becomes still, and listens for the resonance that the pneumatic spark already carries within it. The echo of the monad's overflow, the frequency that the divine light brought with it when it descended into the demiurge's construction. This practice was not meditation in the modern therapeutic sense. It was a cosmological act, a deliberate turning of the soul's attention toward the frequency that the archon mechanisms are specifically designed to drown out, with noise, with doctrine, with the endless external demands of religious performance. The Church did not suppress this practice because it was heretical in the doctrinal sense. It suppressed it because it was effective. A soul that learns to hear the frequency of the pleroma's overflow within itself does not need an institution to mediate its relationship with the divine, does not need a priest, does not need a council's permission to access genuine spiritual reality. It hears it directly, in the silence, in the turning inward, in the specific quality of stillness that the first frequency produces. When the soul stops performing its spiritual life and begins actually living it, that was the danger. and that was what was erased. If what you are hearing is resonating with something in you, something older than your education and your religious formation, then like this video now and subscribe to the Gnostic Archive, because we go into these suppressed teachings week by week, methodically, completely. And the pneumatic spark in you deserves a complete map, not fragments. The second suppressed frequency is more demanding, both to understand and to practice, and the question that unlocks it is this: what is the sound of genuine absence? Not the performed absence of monastic silence, not the theatrical emptiness of a ritual fast, but genuine absence, the specific quality of inner stillness that comes when the soul has set aside, fully and without pretense, every archon constructed identity it has been handed, every label, every role, every spiritually impressive self-description that the ego assembles from the available religious materials and presents as the self. The Valentinian tradition, which preserved the most philosophically sophisticated of all the Gnostic cosmological teachings, had a specific understanding of this frequency. They called it the sound of kenosis, of genuine emptying, not the Christian theological kenosis of a deity voluntarily limiting its power, but the Gnostic kenosis of a soul voluntarily dissolving the false self that the demiurge's world constructed around the pneumatic spark, layer by layer, until what remains is the spark itself. And the spark, the teachers said, has a sound. It is not a sound the ears can hear. It is not a vibration in the physical frequency spectrum. It is a resonance that the soul recognizes, in the way that a memory of genuine safety feels different in the body than the performance of safety, in the way that a moment of real understanding feels different from the recitation of memorized information. The spark recognizes its own frequency. When the layers of constructed identity are quiet enough for the recognition to occur, the Gospel of Philip, one of the most carefully preserved of the Nag Hammadi texts, approaches this teaching in the language of the bridal chamber, the sacred space in which the soul's recognition of its own pneumatic nature occurs, not as an external event, not as a visitation from outside, but as an interior moment of genuine self-recognition, the spark finding itself in the silence beneath the noise of its archon-constructed life. The Church understood this teaching. The early councils that determined canonical scripture had access to these texts. They read them, they deliberated about them, and they removed them, not because the theology was incoherent. The Valentinian theological framework is arguably the most philosophically coherent cosmological system produced in the ancient world. They removed them because the practice they encoded, the practice of genuine kenosis, of interior dissolving of constructed identity, of listening for the spark's own frequency in the silence beneath the archon noise, that practice did not require the Church. It required only honesty and stillness and the willingness to hear what was already present. An institution that mediates between the soul and the divine cannot survive the widespread practice of a technique that eliminates the need for mediation. So the technique was labeled heresy. The texts were destroyed where they could be found and destroyed, and the frequency of genuine kenosis, the second suppressed sound, was buried under 17 centuries of liturgical noise, designed, whether consciously or not, to keep the soul's attention directed outward, toward the institution, away from the silence where the spark speaks. The third suppressed frequency is the one that the Gnostic tradition considered the most dangerous to the archon system and the most transformative for the soul. What is the frequency of gnosis itself? Not the knowledge of information, not the accumulation of theological data, not the satisfaction of a mind that has successfully organized a large number of spiritual concepts into a coherent framework. The frequency of genuine gnosis, the direct, unmediated, interior recognition of the pneumatic spark's true nature, has a specific quality that no amount of theological study can produce and no institutional credential can confer. The tripartite tractate, the most philosophically developed of all the Nag Hammadi texts, describes this frequency in terms of what it produces in the soul that experiences it. Not transformation in the sense of becoming something different, transformation in the sense of recognizing what was always the case. The way that waking from a dream does not change the dreamer, it simply reveals that the dream was a dream, and that the dreamer was always the dreamer, and that the distance between the dreamer and the genuine reality was always only the dream's own thickness. Gnosis produces a specific interior resonance, a quality of knowing that is felt rather than merely thought, that reorganizes the soul's relationship to its own existence. not through a process of learning new information, but through a moment of recognition so complete that the prior state of not recognizing becomes difficult to remember clearly. The Gnostic teachers described this recognition in terms of sound because sound, in the ancient world, was understood as the fundamental medium of reality's self-expression, the logos, the divine word, the primordial sound from which all structures emerge. Was not a metaphor for the teachers of the Sethian and Valentinian schools. It was a precise cosmological description. The demiurge built his world by imitating the pleroma's frequencies, imperfectly, producing a counterfeit resonance, a world that vibrates at a slightly wrong frequency, that always feels to the pneumatic soul embedded within it like a note played slightly flat, close enough to the genuine tone that the untrained ear mistakes it for correct, wrong enough that the soul that has begun to hear correctly cannot unhear the wrongness. Gnosis is the moment when the soul hears the genuine frequency for the first time from within the counterfeit world, and recognizes it, not as something external and unreachable, but as its own deepest nature, the tone the spark has been producing all along, beneath the archon noise, waiting to be heard, and what the Church suppressed, what the councils removed from the canonical texts, what the institutional religious structure of the past 17 centuries has consistently and systematically prevented its adherents from accessing, is not information about this frequency. It is the practice of listening for it, the contemplative technologies, the specific interior techniques, the precise methods of inner attention that the Gnostic teachers developed and preserved and encoded in texts that were buried in a jar near Nag Hammadi and not rediscovered until 1945. Those technologies are the third suppressed frequency, not a sound, a practice of listening for the sound that the spark already produces, in the silence beneath the noise. What does it mean, practically and personally, that these three frequencies were suppressed? It means that every soul living inside the demiurge's construction, in the specific form that this culture and this historical moment has produced, has been handed a spiritual map that is missing three of its most essential features. The map has the destination on it. Every religious tradition preserves some trace of the genuine cosmological understanding, some echo of the pleroma's light, some fragment of the teaching that points toward the pneumatic spark's true nature, but the map is missing the roads. The first frequency, the practice of listening for the pleroma's overflow within the pneumatic spark, that is a road. The second frequency, the practice of genuine kenosis, of dissolving the archon-constructed layers of false identity until the spark itself becomes audible, that is a road. The third frequency, the contemplative technology of orienting the soul's attention toward the genuine resonance of gnosis, rather than the counterfeit resonance of institutional religious performance, that is a road. Without these roads, the soul knows the destination exists. It feels the pull of the genuine frequency, in moments of unexpected beauty, in flashes of interior recognition that the constructed self cannot explain, in the persistent, nagging sense that something is present and important and enormously close and somehow consistently just beyond the reach of the identity the archon world constructed. Those moments are the suppressed frequencies breaking through, not because the suppression failed, but because the pneumatic spark's genuine resonance cannot be permanently silenced. It can be drowned, it can be distorted, it can be buried under centuries of liturgical noise and doctrinal insistence and the relentless demand that the soul direct its spiritual attention outward, toward the institution, away from the silence. But it cannot be eliminated, because the monad's generativity, the same overflowing fullness that produced the pleroma and permitted Sophia's reach and allowed the demiurge to build his counterfeit construction, is still the ground of the pneumatic spark's existence, still the frequency beneath all the archon noise, still the tone the spark has been producing since before the demiurge arranged his prison around it. The suppression was thorough, it was sustained, it was 17 centuries of systematic institutional effort to keep the soul's attention directed away from its own deepest nature, but it was not permanent. And the fact that you are here, that you found this channel, that something in you recognized the map and wanted more of it, is the suppressed frequency breaking through, in you, now, a dimension to this understanding that makes the full picture both more demanding and more genuinely hopeful than the surface reading of the suppression narrative allows. It describes the demiurge's construction not simply as a prison, but as a world in which the genuine divine frequency is encoded, at a level the demiurge himself did not understand. The demiurge imitated the pleroma's patterns, without understanding what he was imitating. He copied the structure of the genuine frequencies, and in copying them, embedded them in his construction, inverted, distorted, covered in the noise of archon mechanisms, but present. This is the dimension of the hidden agenda that changes the relationship to the suppressed frequencies entirely. They were not only suppressed from outside, from the institutional religious structure that recognized their danger and removed them from the canonical record, they were also buried from within the material world's own structure. The demiurge's imitation of the pleroma encoded the genuine frequencies into the world itself, imperfectly, counterfeitly, but recognizably, to the soul that has begun to hear correctly. The beauty of the natural world that the pneumatic soul finds inexplicably moving. That is the suppressed first frequency, the pleroma's overflow, encoded in the demiurge's imitation of it, breaking through the imitation's surface at the moments when the material world's beauty exceeds what the demiurge's construction can fully account for, the moments of genuine human connection, of love or grief or recognition between souls embedded in the same material world, that produce a quality of interior resonance that the archon mechanisms cannot generate and cannot fully suppress. That is the suppressed second frequency, the kenosis, the dissolving of constructed identity that genuine relationship between pneumatic souls produces automatically, when the relationship is genuine enough, and the moments of interior silence, when the noise of the archon world falls away unexpectedly, in the middle of ordinary life, and something is present that the constructed self cannot name but the pneumatic spark recognizes immediately. That is the suppressed third frequency, gnosis, breaking through, not because the practice was mastered, but because the spark's own nature is too strong to remain completely buried. Even in the middle of the demiurge's most thoroughly constructed noise, the Church suppressed the practice of listening for these frequencies, but it could not suppress the frequencies themselves, because they are not features of the religious tradition. They are features of the pneumatic spark's own nature and the demiurge's own world, however inadvertently, encoded them. If this teaching is landing somewhere real in you, if the map is becoming clearer, then subscribe to the Gnostic Archive, turn on the notification bell. Every week we go deeper into the suppressed teachings, methodically, without the institutional filters, because the pneumatic spark in you deserves the complete map, not the version that was handed to you, the genuine one. The practical question, the one that makes this teaching not a historical curiosity but a living reality, is this: how do you begin to hear frequencies that were suppressed before you were born? How do you practice listening for sounds that 17 centuries of institutional religious culture have systematically trained you not to hear? The Gnostic teacher's answer, encoded in the contemplative instructions scattered across the Nag Hammadi texts, is not a technique in the modern self-help sense. It is not a sequence of steps that produces reliable results when followed correctly. It is a reorientation, a fundamental shifting of the soul's attention, from the outward direction that the archon world structures constantly demand, to the inward direction that the pneumatic spark's genuine nature requires. And the beginning of that reorientation is simpler than the sophistication of this cosmological framework might suggest. It begins with the recognition that the noise, the relentless, exhausting, structurally maintained noise of the demiurge's world, is not the natural condition of your inner life. It is the archon mechanism. It is the specific feature of the material world's construction that keeps the soul's attention directed away from its own deepest nature, and the noise, when recognized as a mechanism rather than experienced as the natural condition of existence, begins to lose its authority. Not immediately, not completely. The archon mechanisms are not defeated by a single recognition. The suppression that 17 centuries of institutional effort produced is not dissolved in a single moment of interior stillness. But the recognition begins something. It inaugurates a process, a reorientation of attention that, practiced consistently, begins to make the suppressed frequencies audible, in the way that a musical ear, trained over time, begins to hear notes that the untrained ear cannot distinguish. The soul that begins to turn its attention inward, consistently, without the expectation of dramatic experience or the demand for immediate confirmation, begins to hear, first faintly, then more clearly, the frequencies that were always present, beneath the noise, waiting. The first frequency, the sound of the pleroma's overflow, becomes audible in the moments of unexpected fullness, when the soul stops trying to acquire something and rests, briefly, in what it already is. The fullness is not produced by the stillness, it was always there. The stillness simply makes it audible. The second frequency, the sound of genuine kenosis, becomes audible in the moments when the soul stops performing its spiritual life and acknowledges, honestly and without decoration, its actual interior condition. The spark beneath the performance is not more impressive than the performance. It is simpler, more honest, and recognizable in a way that the performance never quite is. The third frequency, the resonance of gnosis itself, becomes audible not through the accumulation of spiritual knowledge but through the specific quality of attention that the teachers called gnosis, direct, unmediated, interior recognition of the pneumatic spark's true nature. It is not a prize awarded to the sufficiently prepared, it is the spark recognizing itself. In the moment when the soul's attention is quiet enough and honest enough and genuinely turned toward the genuine question, what am I, beneath all of this, that question, asked genuinely, without the protective overlay of spiritual confidence or the self-deprecating overlay of spiritual inadequacy, is the beginning of the third frequency's audibility. The Gospel of Truth, in a passage of extraordinary precision, describes the condition of the soul inside the demiurge's world as being like someone who has fallen into a troubled sleep, who dreams of terrors and confusions and experiences that feel entirely real while the dream lasts, and who, upon waking, finds that everything that seemed so solid and real and inescapable was the dream's own substance, not reality, the dream's substance, the suppressed frequencies. In the Gospel of Truth's framework are not techniques for escaping the dream. They are the specific quality of inner attention that recognizes the dream as a dream, while still inside it. This distinction is important. The Gnostic path is not primarily about escaping the material world in the physical sense. It is not about rejecting embodied life, or treating the body as a burden to be discarded as quickly as possible. The tripartite tractate is explicit on this point. The restoration, the apokatastasis, the moment in which the pleroma's relationship with the material world is fully resolved, does not eliminate the material world, it fulfills it. What is being escaped is the dream state, the specific quality of consciousness that experiences the demiurge's construction as the totality of reality, that takes the archon mechanisms at face value, that mistakes the noise for the natural condition of existence, that confuses the constructed identity with the genuine self and the suppressed frequencies. When practiced, dissolve that dream state from within, not by removing the soul from the material world, but by changing the quality of the soul's consciousness within it, from the consciousness that mistakes the dream for reality, to the consciousness that recognizes the dream as a dream, without leaving it, without rejecting it, without treating the body or the material life as the enemy. The pneumatic spark, awakened within the material world, does not flee the world. It inhabits it differently, with the specific quality of presence that comes from knowing what you are, from hearing your own genuine frequency, from recognizing the monad's light within yourself, in the world that was built to prevent that recognition, and that quality of presence. That specific way of inhabiting embodied existence with the genuine gnosis of the pneumatic spark's nature is what the hidden agenda was always reaching toward. Not the soul's escape from the demiurge's world, but the soul's awakening within it. As the monad's most demanding and most significant form of self-knowledge, currently, in the act of completing itself, the three suppressed frequencies were not erased from reality, they were erased from the tradition, from the map, from the institutional transmission of spiritual knowledge that determined what every soul born into the Western religious world would and would not have access to. But the frequencies themselves, being features of the pneumatic spark's own nature rather than features of any religious tradition, could not be erased from the soul, and so they persisted, in fragments, in mystical traditions within and at the edges of institutional religion, in the contemplative practices of individuals who, without the complete map, followed the suppressed frequencies by instinct, who heard something in the silence and turned toward it, without a name for what they were turning toward. The Sufi mystics heard the first frequency in the concept of fana, the dissolving of the individual self into the divine fullness, the echo of the pleroma's overflow, encoded in a tradition that the institutional religious structure of Islam repeatedly attempted to suppress. For the same reasons the Church suppressed the Gnostic teachings, because a soul that hears the divine frequency directly does not need the institution. The Christian mystics, Meister Eckhart, Hildegard of Bingen, the anonymous author of The Cloud of Unknowing, heard the second frequency, in the specific quality of interior stillness that genuine contemplative practice produces. The kenosis, beneath the institutional theological framework, the suppressed Gnostic teaching breaking through. In the experience of practitioners who reached the silence and found what was always there, and across traditions, in moments that the institutional religious structures consistently struggled to categorize and control, individuals heard the third frequency, the direct, unmediated interior recognition of the pneumatic spark's nature, gnosis, breaking through the suppression, not because the technique was known, but because the spark's own nature is too genuinely present to remain permanently buried. The suppression was thorough, but the frequencies were stronger, and they are present now, in you, in the specific quality of recognition that brought you to this teaching, in the pneumatic spark that knew, before you had words for it, that the official version of spiritual reality was incomplete, that something was missing, that the map had been altered. The monad's hidden agenda, as the tripartite tractate expresses it with a directness that leaves no comfortable distance, is not complete without the specific contribution of the souls who hear the suppressed frequencies inside the demiurge's construction, and recognize them, and develop the quality of gnosis that only the conditions of the material world, with its genuine absence, its genuine difficulty, its genuine resistance, can produce. The aeons of the pleroma know the Father through fullness, through the unobstructed resonance of the genuine divine frequencies. In a world where those frequencies are the natural condition of existence, you are learning to know the Father through the experience of suppressed frequencies, through the specific difficulty of hearing the genuine tone inside a world that was built to produce noise, that has maintained that noise through 17 centuries of institutional effort, that has handed you, at birth, a spiritual map with the most important roads removed, and you are finding the frequencies anyway, not through superior spiritual attainment, not through the accumulation of esoteric knowledge, but through the specific quality of honest, interior attention that the pneumatic spark makes possible, in any soul, in any lifetime, in any moment of genuine turning toward the genuine question. That finding, in these conditions, against this resistance, contributes something to the mukkad's self-knowledge that no aeon in the undisturbed pleroma can contribute. The specific quality of recognition that comes from hearing the genuine frequency inside the noise is a dimension of the monad's self-knowledge that the pleroma's fullness cannot generate on its own. You are not the unfortunate beneficiary of a suppression that went wrong. You are the pneumatic spark doing the most demanding and most significant work the hidden agenda requires, in the most challenging conditions the monad's generativity has yet produced, hearing the suppressed frequencies, developing genuine gnosis, within the specific resistance of the world that was built to prevent it. The three sounds the church erased were not erased because they were false, they were erased because they were true, true enough to be dangerous, to an institution whose authority depended on the soul's ongoing need for mediation, for the priest, the council, the canonical text, the institutional structure standing between the pneumatic spark and its own genuine frequency. The first sound, the pleroma's overflow, audible in the interior stillness that the soul can access without institutional permission, without doctrinal authorization, without the church's approval or the church's mediation. The second sound, genuine kenosis, the dissolving of constructed identity that makes the spark itself audible, a practice that requires only honesty and the willingness to hear what is already present. The third sound, gnosis itself, the direct recognition of the pneumatic spark's true nature, that the gospel of truth describes as the waking from the dream, available to any soul, in any moment of genuine interior turning. These were the dangerous sounds, and they were erased systematically, and the map of the spiritual world has been missing them for 17 centuries, but the frequencies were never actually gone. They were in the spark all along, waiting for the soul that was quiet enough and honest enough and willing enough to hear them. You are that soul. The suppressed frequencies are already present in you, not as something to be acquired, as something to be recognized, in the silence, beneath the noise. Now, the hidden agenda is in motion, the restoration is in process, and every moment of genuine recognition you develop within the conditions the demiurge's world has arranged around you is contribution to the completion that the monad's generativity set in motion when Sophia reached. Subscribe to the Gnostic Archive, turn on the notification bell. Every week, we go deeper into the suppressed map, together, until the distance between where you are and what you are is finally small enough to dissolve entirely. The frequencies are not gone. They were never gone. They are here, now, waiting, and the waking was always the point.